Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. It's nice. So, we're about to get started. So, if you can please take your seat. If it's not your seat, ask them, can you please sit down at their table? So, we're all here today for Representation Matters 2023. You can't be what you can't see. Outstanding title. So, I'm just here to give the opening and say, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm truly excited. As you can see, this is a new space, a bigger space, and so many faces. Some are familiar, some are new. Best networking opportunities ever. So on this morning, I would like to talk about, just briefly say, I am so excited to see everyone, but most importantly, this is a very diverse group. And people think of diversity as just male, female. It's ethnicity, nationality, it could be disabilities and things you don't see. But most importantly about today is about diversity of thought. As you sit here today, we'll take you along the journey of motherhood and their kids' perspective. We'll talk about breaking barriers. Why does representation matter? And lastly, but not least, we'll get a chance to hear from our males. What is true allyship and what does it mean to us? So as you sit back and enjoy the journey, let's all say, welcome, welcome, welcome. And in that, so if we'll have our two hosts come up and join us. So Jamie and Maciel have done an amazing job. This journey from beginning to today has been awesome. To see the growth that you guys have done, it's truly something that's remarkable. So on behalf of us, everyone in the audience as well as myself, we want to say thank you for giving us this space.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Representation Matters 2023. We cannot believe that this room is filled to 400 people. I mean, incredible.
Incredible. You know, when we thought about this event, we were like, what are we going to do? We really need to find a new venue, but how are we going to go from 250 people to 400? And then I thought, well, you know what? We'll get a venue that can fit 400, but our goal will be 350. And as many of y'all know, that goal surpassed, and 400 it is. And it really goes to show this space and what is needed in this space. And to be quite honest, we could not be here today if it wasn't for our sponsors. So I first just want to give a shout out to everybody and all the sponsors that supported this event. And yes, I have my iPad to read them all off because I could not memorize them. But it comes from a full heart to really, really recognize some of the sponsors that have been from the very beginning, one of those being Next Tier. And they had been a part of every event since we started. And without them, we would not have been able to have this room filled today. So there's Next Tier, Patterson. Liberty is another one that had been a huge supporter of us from the beginning. And it's outstanding to see their continued support and the other companies that follow. BPX, Snyder Electric, Champion X, Hess, Dyna Energetic, Key Energy, Neighbors, Port West, TGS, Altitude, another one that has been there from the beginning. Thank you, Altitude. ConocoPhillips, Synchrony Group, VoltaGrid, Range, NOV, H&P, and Tenaris. And it wouldn't be an event without really recognizing those partners that we have and those nonprofit and charities that we really want everybody to be involved in and take a look at. We got United Way, Sky High, huge one that I really have my heart is into. I really love that organization. And Red M as well, another one that's very needed in this space.
So a lot of you who may be new have no idea what Flipping the Barrel is and how it started. And so Jamie and I met 4 years ago. Very random story. We'll keep it for another day. But 3 weeks into it, we decided to start this podcast. So that's weird, right? You meet someone 3 weeks in, you go into starting something together. And the reason we did it too, the energy industry has such a bad rep to the outside world. People would always say, you work in oil and gas? But they pollute the planet. It's bad. I would never work there. Or you're a female and you work in the field out on a rig. I didn't know I could have that sort of career. So we realized between Jamie and I that we've had great careers, we've had great support from men who've been sponsors of our careers, and we thought we need to do some sort of podcast where maybe we can interview them and maybe we can find out more about their careers, because as we were going through our careers, we had a lot of questions. How did they do it? Can you have children and actually still be successful as a mother with a career? Can you truly, how do you get a promotion? How do you network properly? All of these things that were in our heads, and we thought, why not interview some CEOs? Question, what kind of CEO would say yes to 2 random girls who messaged them on LinkedIn?
Yes,
Well,
LinkedIn.
about 100 of them.
LinkedIn was the way that we started. We have a lot of people that ask, how did you get people on the podcast? We hunted them down on LinkedIn. And we told them what our mission was. And I would say that everything that we have done from the point that we started was about shining a light on this industry, shining a light on everybody in this room, and more importantly, showcasing the fact that it's not just women that are missing out a huge opportunity in the energy space that need to be here and need to have a voice at the table, but there's other people that need to be recognized. We have veterans, we have people with disabilities, we have diversity of thought, as Ray was saying as she came up here today. There's so many aspects of today that we feel is not spoken enough about. And so through the podcast, 2 years ago, after we started 4 years ago, we said, we have such a big community, we need to start events. We need to bring people in one room, we need them to hear it in person. And so that is what sparked what is our all-women's event, Pursuing Greatness. To then Pursuing Greatness, we felt we need men at the table. We need men there. We started Reputation Matters. And we're here today, the second Reputation Matters event, with, as we said, when we started, with 150 more people, and we just couldn't be more elated for all of you in this room. And another big piece of what we do and why we do it is there's these questions that we all have. We all think about them, but sometimes we're too scared to ask. Marcel and I, we're here to ask those questions, which really brought us to our first panel today on motherhood. When Marcel and I became mothers, we had so many questions about how are we going to do this? How do you manage? And even before we got pregnant, we thought there was no way. I mean, even though it might be 2023, there's no way. But through the amazing women and leaders that we have spoken to, it gave us that hope that there is a way. And then more importantly, we thought, you know what? We need to have the kids on. We need to have now young adults. I first called them children, which I needed to correct myself, on to tell us what it was really like and how actually incredible it is to have a mom who not only is supportive at home, but also recognizes where she needs to be in her career and doesn't let go of her dreams. So I'm more than excited to start the first panel. Thank you, Maciel. So today's panel, as I was mentioning, opening up on motherhood, I'd like to call our 4 panelists to the stage. So we have Kim Krager. She is now the VP of Midstream for BPX. And her daughter, Caitlin, who is a sophomore at Colorado School of Mines. Another, you want to talk about breaking barriers. When I hear about Colorado School of Mines, I know how that's a male-dominated school. So I could only imagine what Caitlin's classes are like. And we have next Regina Jones. She's the Chief Legal Officer at ADM. And her son, Dylan. And you're going to need to talk to him after this. He's got a hard decision to make. Is it Prairie View A&M or U of H? So he's working on it.
You want to turn sideways a bit?
So I kind of mentioned about motherhood when we were talking about the opening. And I really want to start this panel with, this is a really popular social media graphic going around right now with words describing motherhood in 2023. It has over 1 million views, 2,000 comments, and a lot of women and men that relate to it. It states, make sure, as it says, how to be a mom in 2023. Make sure your children's academics, emotional, spiritual, physical, psychological, mental, nutritional, and social needs are met while being careful not to overstimulate, understimulate, improperly medicate, helicopter, or neglect them in a screen-free, don't forget that, processed foods-free, plastic-free, body-positive, socially conscious, equitable, but also authoritative, nurturing, but fostering of independence. Come on, guys. Gentle, but not over permissive, pesticide-free, two-story, multilingual home, preferably in a cul-de-sac. Don't forget that. With a backyard, and also don't forget the coconut oil. Could it be more correct? And they say that girls and boys who grow up seeing their mother figures dim themselves in order to let their children shine may grow into women who view being a mother as losing part of themselves. That makes them special, or a father who expects their wife to be that for their children. Through examining the relationships between mother figure and daughter son, one can find a balance between being a mother and being a person. As parents, many of us often look at individuals in roles like Kim and Regina's and wonder how they managed it all. Beyond the question of how did they do it, we often find ourselves pondering, how did their children fare? Can you relate to this curiosity? I know that's one thing I always thought, especially when we started the podcast. Yeah, but I want to talk to your kids. This brings us to today's point of inspiration, a deeper dive into the challenges and triumphs of these two exceptional leaders, who they are as mothers, and the significant influence they've had on shaping their children into individuals they are today, along with a closer look at how they'll successfully managed to do it all while rising to the top in their careers. So I'd like to open up with Kim. Kim, during your formative years, you witnessed your mother's role as a dedicated stay-at-home mom, an active participant in the PTO, a position many working moms might envy today. She excelled at nurturing the family, baking cookies, and being a reliable homeroom mom, leaving a lasting impression. Your own ambition led you to pursue a career in engineering, driven by an influential math teacher in high school. After earning a petroleum engineering degree, you dove headfirst into your career, even immediately after your marriage, taking on your initial assignment on the North Slope in Alaska. Your life has been a whirlwind of accomplishments and aspirations, and it hasn't slowed down in the 27 years of marriage, during which you've raised 2 daughters and become the COO and now VP at BPX. Reflecting on your early years as a young mother, when your children were in their formative stages, what drove you to continue modeling resilience and determination to your daughters, all while not losing sight of your aspirations?
Yeah, thank you, Jamie, and welcome to the room. It's amazing to see it filled and filled with such a diverse audience. I think really my goal all along was to be a role model for our girls. And so that my internal debate was always, well, what is that role model? Because my role model was a stay-at-home mom. My husband's mother also stayed at home. But I went to school for an engineering degree, not to put it to side. We waited 8 years to have kids, so I was well into my career before we started our family. But I knew all along, even when they were little and it was hard, that if their future was more likely to be like mine than like my mother's. And so I had to break my own paradigms of what good motherhood looked like and forge a path of showing them that they can pursue a career, that if they marry, that's fantastic, but I don't want them to marry for their livelihood. I want them to choose their path and be the person that they want to be. And so that kind of was my internal motivator, and coupled with the fact that my spouse also was incredibly supportive in that journey. But I think, that's what guided me.
Oh, thank you, Kim. And Caitlin, I know when we spoke, seeing your mom follow her career goals at times, as we all know, it meant that she wasn't there in the mornings to get you ready or after school to share the days of the events. And then given your dad's schedule too, you often had one parent traveling for work or occasionally away at the same time. And many of us in the outside world would always wonder, how did that fare, or what did you learn from those experiences? Looking back at these times to where you are today, what would you have told your younger self while you were going through maybe the hard moments when you were too young to really realize, what was going on as far as your mom excelling in her career and taking those steps for that?
Yeah, I mean, it was challenging not having my mom there every morning or every afternoon, but my family really stepped up and was there for us. And I think it gave me a unique perspective where I didn't need my mom there every morning. I trusted her. I knew she was off doing important things. And so I'd probably tell myself, your mommy is changing the world. Yeah. So I think she not being there, it made me really value the time that I had with her, and it made the time that I had with her more special because that was the time I got with my mom. She was our cheer captain growing up, and so she came to cheer practice and we would work on choreo together, and that was something unique that most of my friends didn't have. And she did National Charity League with me and my sister all throughout middle school and high school. So the time I had with her was more special and meant more to me than maybe if she had been around all the time.
No, I love that. I think that really goes into that quality over quantity. And I think as moms, a lot of times we feel that we have to be there all the time for our children to understand the love and care that we have for them. But at the end of the day, it's not just being present, but it's actually being there for them at the times that mean the most to them. And I think y'all show a good representation of that. Regina, moving on to you. Your upbringing was marketed by being what you called a latchkey kid, as both your parents worked, often leaving you at home alone with your siblings after school. However, your determination was evident from an early age, demonstrating by your willingness to switch your college degree, pursue night school while working, and even confront a brain tumor on your path to becoming a lawyer. Throughout your career journey, you frequently found yourself as the only minority in the room, which you saw as an opportunity to be memorable, but you knew it was up to you to make that right impression. Early in your career, you excelled and even traveled the world with your two sons, who became expat kids, constantly adapting to new cultures, much like you and Kevin did. By the time your sons reached 12th grade, they had attended 8 different schools, offering some perspective on the constant mobility. In these times, when you had to make family decisions about moving and adjusting to new environments, how did you manage to overcome the challenges and not let them hinder your personal and professional progress?
Well, that's a loaded question. And it's great how you painted the picture of how just my life was so amazing. But and since I don't know is not an appropriate answer, I'll go with it was a journey, and I never ever started any of it, quite frankly, thinking about what the destination was. But being a good mom is something that you just kind of want to do, but at the same time, being a good human and recognizing that I had goals that I wanted to accomplish to kind of create what I thought was my complete self. But that involved a team effort. And, we always talk about it as a family team, Jones, and I don't want to recite that too much. But when you think about just kind of the parent at one point child relationship, it was about how do we all play a role in this journey? And recognizing that everyone had a role to play, not just me and not just my husband. I mean, if we've got to eat breakfast in the morning, my husband would always say, you eat what you kill. And quite frankly, that applied to our kids too. And so everyone knew.
Dylan Simon smiling, he's like, yeah.
I mean, everyone knew that I wasn't going to be the only one making breakfast. And quite frankly, you might not eat if you were waiting on me to do so. So it was kind of a journey of us realizing that, hey, certain things are going to happen, but certain things are going to happen because I also played a role in making them happen. So I'd like to think it was a collaborative approach, across us accomplishing and getting anything done within our family. And that bled into me personally, because as a young child, I kind of had to do that. Meaning, if you want to eat a snack after school, you might want to make a snack when you get home from school. So that kind of translated into motherhood, which I didn't have this concept of what a mom should be like. I still don't. I do know though what I wanted my children to be like when they grew up, and that was good human citizens and good people. And I didn't really care what else came around that other than us being a strong family and us all contributing and recognizing that the outcome was to just be a good person.
I love that you talked about being a good human, which brings me to Dylan. Dylan, I found it really interesting when we spoke because I don't have very many close friends that are expat kids. And so it was really great to hear your perspective. And, I wanted to ask you, did you ever envy other kids who stayed in one place their entire life? Because, when we did the opening, there's about 8 different schools that you attended. And, being an expat kid, you constantly had to move. And then on top of that question is, did you notice any different perspectives from you than your peers, given your visibility to other cultures at a young age?
So I was never envious about how other kids lived or, if they were only staying in one place with only one group of friends. Because generally, the places I visited or lived, per se, and the people I met were always great. There was great schools, great education, and they always were welcoming enough to make you fit in no matter where you were, whether if it was a different country or a different state or a different city. I was never left wanting for more of a social environment or an educational environment. It was always great. And whenever my parents would say, "Oh yeah, let's okay, are you guys willing to go move with us?" and I would always be down because they're always making the right decisions, and I knew it was in my best interest if we go to a different place because I always ended up enjoying it. So far they haven't missed. So
I love that. So the next question is around really having it all, and this is for both Kim and you, Regina. And it's, many people grapple with the notion of having it all when it comes to balancing career and parenthood. We also hear that there's no such thing as balance. What has worked for you, and how have you been able to handle the challenging and demanding responsibilities of both, especially in a world where we still don't believe that balance is really a true measure that we can meet?
Yeah. So I totally agree. There's no such thing as balance. At least I never found it. I think your life is more of an ecosystem, and you have to figure out how to cultivate it into the outcome you're looking for. So, a couple things that I think drove our decision making and are definitely quality over quantity. That's my MO, not only my personal life, but my work life as well. And there's lots of colleagues in the room that will be chuckling over that. The second thing is plan. Andy and I are both planners, so when the school calendar comes out, all the important dates are on our work calendars or on our home calendars. And we try to declare the no-fly zones. Like, this is a day where I need to be there for my family, and I don't need to be there for work. So we would always do that well out in advance. And then third, when we moved to Houston and the kids were babies, we didn't have any family here. So we had no choice but to seek help. And I think that's really hard to do, but it's super important for you to do. And you need to find what help that equals for your situation. Now, for us, we went the nanny path. I tried daycare. We have a fabulous daycare at BP, and I tried it, but honestly, Andy was traveling so much at the time when the kids were babies and commuting with 2 kids in the car. When you aren't used to living in a big city, I mean, I'd had a day before I even got to my desk. And so then I want you to think about the nanny from a perspective of an economic analysis, because I don't want you to sit there and judge, well, okay, I can only get to the top if I get a nanny, because we had this conversation. But I think you have to do an economic analysis based on what you want, and you have to value your time in that analysis. So what we started realizing was, for us, the kids were always sick on a day where we both had the most important meetings of the world.
Always.
And we could not, and so we had to kind of rock, paper, scissors who had to stay home. Because the daycare policy, if they have a fever, they have to be fever-free for 48 hours and blah, 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 blah. You all have experienced it or are experiencing it. So we realized, okay, the nanny solves that equation in that there's a consistency in the life for the kids. We also hired a nanny that was super flexible. She wasn't just about the purest duties of raising the kids, because we put them in Montessori schools and things like that too, because we wanted them to be socialized. And so she was willing to take on additional responsibilities that were outside of a purist taking care of my children. So she did laundry, she did light cleaning, she did errands, all those things that were the help that took away the chores on the weekends so that we could spend quality time with the kids. So our kind of at-home time was more about investing in intentional time with the kids. And then because we had the nanny, we had a higher quality approach to our work. And if you value your time that you would have, without that investment, that you would have been spending on Saturday to do the groceries, to do the laundry, to do all the things that are taking you away from your kids, I think the math will work for you. If you think about the fact that you're getting, you're performing better at work, you're going to get career progression out of that, and so the return on investment is there.
I love that you broke that down, and she's right. When we first had this conversation, I was like, well, we have a full room of people, and I know myself, my daughter goes to a Montessori school, and I had a nanny for the first year, and then I wanted my daughter to be socialized, and it just worked out for us that we had one nearby. But I wanted Kim and Regina to both explain how they came to that analysis. And so, Regina, why don't you, love to hear from you.
Okay, so this is a great question because people who know me know that I always have said, literally, my entire children, the life of my children is we have outsourced everything. Except there's a few things I couldn't outsource, and I'll just kind of leave it at that. But everything else I did. And, another dynamic, and I think there's all adults in the room, but my husband always calls himself, or I call him kind of the asshole with the spreadsheet, because it was all about now the balance. And that balance, quite frankly, for this conversation is a financial one, which is how much do we spend on things? So let's just pick food, daycare, you add all that stuff up on a spreadsheet. And then you realize that, well, I could actually be more efficient and effective with my time if I were able to take all that and put it in one place. So we added up how much we spend eating out. How much do we spend on groceries? How much do we spend on Ubers these days? It wasn't Ubers then. And then you say, okay, so we were going to get a nanny. In this instance, we had it because we've had over the course of our lives a nanny, a chef, drivers, all types of people, depending on what was going on at that moment. And basically we said, okay, we'll hire someone to do this. Sometimes it would be one person to drive and take them places and to pick them up from school and to cook dinner when they get home. We would also be thoughtful about the timing because early on we noticed that, hey, the minute we get home, the nanny's leaving. And then that's when you need some help the most, quite frankly. And so my husband and I flipped it and said, okay, during rush hour, which was kind of the 5 to 8 time frame, so maybe that's hours, then we want someone to help us then. So we actually had, call it a nanny, but she would actually take care of the meals and take care of the dishes and take care of the laundry. So when we got home, we'd spend time with our children because that was the only 3 hours we'd have during the day. So recognizing that the cost for all of those things, it sounds like it's super expensive, but at the time, it was really just us making kind of a displacement of we're not going to spend on, maybe we couldn't eat out as much because we have to eat leftovers for 2 days or whatever, but it was about really the quality versus the quantity point, which is we want to spend our time on quality as a family and with our children. And we will make the investment and often the sacrifice to make sure that we were able to now outsource some of those things. For me, I also I think, had to have perspective throughout. And that's the perspective that there's no such thing as balance. So I'm trying to work on my mouth, but that's bullshit. There is no balance. It's all about how can you make sure you are taking care of yourself, your whole self first. And I know Stephanie's here, and Stephanie Cox and I have known each other as far, I was trying to add it up, Steph, but it's like 15 years, and I feel like I grew up with her, meaning as a child, you grow up with people, and as an adult, you grow up with people. And Stephanie and I were both kind of on the same rhythm, and we were like, okay, I've got to be okay with the fact that I might go up to my child's school and they're not quite sure who I am. And because you haven't been there as often as other parents have, and when we were both living abroad, because we both lived in Paris together, it wasn't an environment where you take your kids to school. You take them to the bus, they ride the bus with the rest of the children. And as a mom, you actually don't bother the teachers by coming to the school for things. So the concept of them not knowing who you are, especially when you just never show up anyway, was that you've got to be okay knowing that, look, I'm serving the role and fulfilling the role I need to for my family, for my children, for my spouse, but also for my whole self. And if you can get that right, some days you may not get sleep, other days your kids may not see you. But at the end of the day, if everyone's taken care of and as a family you're working and you have the right rhythm and you have the support in the areas you need it, and as life changes, the areas you need support change. One time, at one period, it could be all about I need someone to take the kids to soccer practice and take them to this, and I'm still going to be there, but I'm going to get there when the game starts. Not for all the who's going to bring the snacks, stuff like that. Where like, here, go buy the snacks, put them in the car, pick up my kids, take them to the soccer game, and I'll be there. If the game starts at 6:30, I'll be there at 6:30. But that's the moment that now you've kind of outsourced, but you've sacrificed that in order to be able to get that quality activity where you've got the right balance. So
No, when I spoke with Kim and Regina about this question, I really wanted them to go into this type of depth because I know on the surface a lot of times, and it's just a mental block I think some of us have when we listen to somebody and then they say, oh, well, we have a nanny or we have a chef, and our first thing is like, oh, well, I can't afford to do that. So I have no, how am I going to ever meet that goal or be successful? And I think it's how you look at it. And I think there's different ways we can all get that kind of support. But the ultimate message is don't be afraid to ask for help. And there's different ways to have help. And it doesn't mean that you have a full-time chef. It could just mean that, you have a grandparent that helps, or you have a neighbor that helps, or it doesn't always have to be something that are completely outsourcing. But I just think as parents, it's most important to know to ask for help, and that we all need it. So you're not alone in that. So turning to Caitlin and Dylan, as kids, was there ever a time when you looked around the room or went to a game and felt like your parents were the only ones not there? And if so, how did you feel? And now looking back at that time, how did you grow or learn from that experience?
I guess for me, it was pretty regular to have only one parent show up to my game or my orchestra concert or, meet the teacher. And so I was kind of used to only having one parent there. But my dad's side of the family moved to Houston and really stepped up in being there. And so throughout high school, my sister can attest, I felt like I had the most family there because my uncle and my aunt were there, my grandparents were there every single game, and people would notice. They would be like, "Oh, your family just showed up," and I was like, "Yeah, they're here." And so, while both my parents might not have been there, I had a whole fan section just for me every single time, and so I think having your family there. Or just friends too makes a really big difference, and it kind of gave me that trust in my parents and my family unit that I didn't need my parents there all the time. I could call them after. They would send me good luck texts before my exams. So I never felt like I was missing out because they were still intentional with me and my family was there supporting me as well. So, I mean, I could be in a completely different country and I can always call my parents and they'll always be there for me, supporting me no matter what I do.
I love that. Thanks, Caitlin. Dylan?
Kind of to piggyback off Caitlin, I mean, no matter what event it was, as long as it was important to me, at least one of them made sure that they were there on time as soon as it starts. It But the little events, nobody really remembers those. It's like, say, if everybody's dressed up on a Halloween day at school, that something that they know that I don't care about, they know they're allowed to miss that. But as soon as it was important, they knew they had to be there, and at least one of them was always there. They always tried to make sure they always had a big part of it too. Like when I was in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts, my dad made sure he was a troop leader in either one. And my mom, for anybody that knows her, she outside is not her forte. She does not like being outside, sleeping outside. She's an inside type of person. She came on camp out and slept in the tent outside and I always was happy and was grateful that they would be there for me.
I love that. And I think what Dylan just said is all those little moments that sometimes we think that we missed out on and is going to be detrimental to them. They don't even remember. And then the big ones that you're there for are the ones that are still instilled in them. And so thank you, Dylan and Caitlin, for sharing that. Which really goes into our next question around mom guilt or envy, as some of us might think of it, are all experiences that I think all parents feel. And it's not always just moms. I know that dads too start to feel the same way when they can't make it and be there as well. Um, to add, it doesn't help that moms judging other moms is real, and society puts a lot of expectations on mothers. Hence the opening of this panel and that long list of items that we're all supposed to meet in expectations. What have you done to overcome the feelings of guilt or envy, and how did you handle the judgment and expectations of others? Because I feel like those can be sometimes the most painful things is when you hear from somebody who you thought might be your friend or somebody in the homeroom that's making a judgment comment because maybe you hadn't been there all the time.
So, on that topic, I'll be interesting. And this is kind of, first of all, for this group, sometimes, well, not for this group, but moms can need to support other moms. When I was kind of coming up, there was this dynamic of, I'll just say judgment, where I felt like I was kind of being judged because I would never be the room mom or because I wouldn't bake the cookies. I'd buy the cookies. And so, but when thinking about guilt, I've never had guilt. My husband and I were talking about this morning about just being unapologetically yourself. I have never been guilty, and I'm not going to be today. And I glad my kids came out okay, and I'm very proud of them. But I don't feel bad for doing what I felt like was the right thing for our family. I did have envy though, because I would show up, and that did mean I didn't want to be able to make the cookies, or I didn't want to be able to be room mom or have the time to spend that amount of time and energy with my children, because I so much respect the investment that moms make in that family unit. It shows up different ways. Some women actually do it full time and run circles around those of us that go into an office every day and have that different type of environment, but they're both equally challenging. But I would really feel envious of moms that were able to manage their whole household. Sometimes as expats, it actually would be a lot more for them than it would be for me as the one being transferred, because everything would be taken care of for the employee. But then the spouse is the one that's got to come in and do all that crap. And those would be moms also trying to take care of their kids. And I'm like, and then they still be the real mom. So I actually did, and even still today, have envy of just people that were able to do all of that and still show up and be a great wife and a great parent and a great all those other things too. Because me, I felt like I was struggling on every single front. I couldn't be good at any of them, but that was kind of my biggest challenge.
Thanks, Regina.
Yeah, so I think for me, I felt I've always been my own worst critic, and I wanted to keep up with the moms that had, I think, more time to give their talents to the school rather. So it took me a while to learn I can't keep up with that. I'm not even going to try. But I learned how I could contribute. I think kind of like Regina was saying, I wasn't the one bringing the homemade cookies, but I was usually the one saying, hey, can I contribute financially? Because sometimes people can give their talents, but they can't give their, they need the funding for the decorations for the dance or whatever. And it was like, okay, I can do that. And if there's a little project I can do at home, I might be able to do that at home at night too, but I can't be at school at 3:00 and decorate. So I think once I kind of figured out where I could be satisfied with my levels of contributions and be at peace with that, that helped. But then I also realized I needed to make sure that the girls knew what we were doing and the why. And so the way I balanced some of that guilt was probably excessively exposing them to the world of hydrocarbons. And Andy too. We have family chats. We would, wherever Andy was in the world, he would drop a pin in the middle of the ocean because he was on a rig somewhere. And the girls were learning world geography at a very early age by understanding where Dad was. And he would bring home, cultural offerings that that the team had given him and exposing him to, what's special about Indonesia and Angola and the North Sea and Azerbaijan. And so they were getting that. And then from mom, they were getting, hey, mom got to take a helicopter to work today. And that was really cool. And or, mom was able to commission this new facility. And so like we were exposing him to different things, which I think helped me internally solve the equation of, okay, well, I'm not there making the bulletin boards at school. And I can't be satisfied with that, but I can give them the satisfaction of knowing other ways that I'm filling my time. But, I think my biggest guilt moment, and I'll share this because it was pretty hard. So Caitlin is our oldest, and Madison's here too, and she's a senior. So I'm gonna relive this moment in about 8 months. But her senior year was fantastic. We celebrated all the accomplishments that a senior in high school and the proud parents would celebrate together. And I kept thinking, man, I'm just gonna cry. And it never happened. And I'm like, okay, this is weird. It wasn't until we were packing her up to go to college. And I was alone in the dining room. Like Amazon had been coming every day, 3 times a day with all the college gear that we needed to have because we had, we checked out like the top 50 things to send your kid to college with and bought them all. So unboxing all of it and packing it up in the bags. And she'd gone to school, in Colorado, so out of state. And I just lost it. I completely lost my shit going, she's not going to live in this house anymore. Like, oh my gosh, I had this amazing plan about, how I had been there on all these quality times and blah, blah, blah. And then in that moment, I was like, did I do the right thing? Because her and my relationship are going to change from here on out. And so we sat down and talked about it. And actually, it was the best conversation that we had had because I think because it validated all my choices were in service of her preparing to launch. And she was ready. And it was great in turn that she mentored me back that, Mom, I have no regrets on my childhood. In fact, seeing you, especially the last couple years, move into more senior levels of leadership and, break the glass ceiling to the C-suite has inspired me to do the same thing. So I think, all along I sort of was trying to keep up, and then I matured into I can't keep up, but here's where I can give. But that one defining moment as she left the house was kind of something that really struck me, but now I'm at peace with. But I can't talk about without a little tear.
I told them when we first reviewed these questions, I said the hardest thing today is going to be one of us not crying, then all of us not all of us crying, because just hearing everything, it's impactful. So going to Dylan and Caitlin, I have a 2-part question for y'all. One is, knowing your mother's careers and what they were doing and their ambitions, did that help change your perspective when they were gone? And then the second part question is, Dylan, I know that you're aspiring to be a lawyer like your mom, and then Caitlin's her sophomore in Colorado School of Mines. Did your parents help, or your moms, that pursuing those types of roles, seeing them do those roles, inspire you to do something similar or be in their footsteps?
Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah. So seeing my mom, she sometimes she had to work very long hours. She had to go to different countries, but I always looked up to her. It was like the fact that she can go to Dubai yesterday and come back 3 days later and still make it to my event, or come back and have a present for me, and then go back to work, and then still have quality time for all of us while rising the ranks. It was like I would do anything just to even be half the person she is. So I always am grateful that I'm near her every day. Because even still, I see people reach out to her on LinkedIn, asking if they could shadow her at work, or if they could get some inspirement from her, or they can learn from her. And I live with her every day, so I really am thankful for that.
We have this inside joke because I've recently moved to and accepted a role with ADM, which is based in Chicago. And Dylan decided to go to school in Texas. So we've got this little love-hate relationship right now because I tell him that he decided to live with his dad. And so, in his mind, he's like, well, I have 2 Christmases and I have 2 holidays, 2 birthdays. So anyway, I'm sorry. When he said he lived with me and he sees me every day, that was bullshit. But I appreciate the nice things he said. That was nice.
Thank you, Dylan.
Yeah. Sorry, can you remind me the first part of the question?
No, it's fine. I was asking you, knowing your mom's role in her career, how that inspired you, but also did it help you in times when she wasn't there, like knowing what her aspirations were and where she was going?
Yeah, I think obviously when we were super young, we didn't really understand why mommy and daddy had to go on work trips, and we just felt like they were leaving us a little bit. But having family there and having a nanny really helped with that. But then as we got older, our parents were very transparent with us about what they were going to do, where they were working, sending us pictures, and it made me realize just how important the work is that they were doing. And then it was like, wow, my mom is off doing really cool stuff. And if you guys haven't already figured it out, like we have some pretty awesome moms. and and so I think for me it was just kind of like I was able to cheer on my mom in that way, like being happy to see her when she got home, asking her about her work trips, and same with my dad, just being able to learn about that, and then being able to go to school and tell my friends, oh, my parents are in some really cool places this week, and they were like, wow, that's awesome. And I would show them pictures. And so for me, it really did help that they were so honest with us about that. And then I guess the second part of the question was, how did that inspire what I'm doing in college, right? So I think having that strong connection with my family allowed me to really branch out and go to school in a different state. I've lived in Texas most of my life. And so um, growing up and having that strong connection with my family and knowing that, like, even if we're not living in the same house or in the same state right now or even the same part of the country, like I still have their support and their love, no matter where I am and what I'm doing. And then learning about extraction growing up really kind of gave me a passion for knowing about critical industries, and it kind of inspired me to do something that was important. And so I'm studying mining engineering right now at Colorado School of Mines. And so for me, that was kind of like an adjacent thing to oil and gas. It wasn't exactly the same thing, but I was still going with the extraction route because I know how important that is. And I want to do something that impacts the world just like my mom and my dad do. And watching her the last few years really accelerate in leadership and mentor people inspired me to want to go down the leadership route someday.
Thank you. I think a common theme throughout a lot of the answers and stuff we've talked about today, we've mentioned Andy and Kevin, y'all's partners, and your dads. And Kim, you've been married for 27 years, and both of you have built your careers at BP and BPX during that time. Balancing dual careers is unquestionably demanding. We often hear that choosing the right life partner is crucial to one's success. Can you elaborate on why you believe selecting a spouse wisely is such a vital factor and how it's played a crucial role in your success and your development?
Absolutely. So Andy and I met at university, so it was clear, we were both studying engineering and we kind of studied each other and got married. But I mean, but he knew that I wanted to pursue a career, and he was super supportive of that. We started work in Alaska. I think that was probably one of the defining moments of the strength of our marriage, was moving away from anybody we knew and starting as professionals together in Alaska. And so we worked and enjoyed a dual career household for 8 years before we decided to start a family. But all along we had shared couple goals. We enjoy each other's time. We're best friends as much as we are spouses. And so we shared the same hobbies and adventures in Alaska. And when we started, it was always our vision in our financial plan, because we had the luxury in Alaska of being mentored by some folks that were really shaped us in understanding how to invest and save and build your retirement. Even though we were only 22 years old, we were thinking about those things at a really early age. So our plan was, if we both stay working, then we can both retire at 50, and we will have so much fun because we'll be super healthy and we'll have all this money and blah, blah, blah. So we kind of had shared goals from the start about professions. And then as we stepped into parenting, we had a shared view on parenting. We co-parented from the start. And this is something that I see so many women make different choices on, is that they think they're the only one that can feed the baby, change the diapers, all this stuff. And you basically disempower the other 50% of the relationship from helping you. And that was never the way Andy and I approached, our marriage or our family life. Is he was very much involved. And that allowed both of us to, progress our careers, because there was always a strong and capable and loving parent at home for the girls. And so I think that co-parenting philosophy, the spouse that supports you fully as a professional. I mean, he's an amazing girl dad, but he's also an amazing leader, because he experiences and gives empathy 24/7 in the household to us. And so that shows up in his work and his leadership. I think anybody that's worked in one of his organizations will have felt that he's very much about equity and helping people solve problems that they, overcoming perceived barriers. He's got a Women in Wells organization that he fostered, and he's a big advocate in the various BRGs we have at BP that are around working families and women in industry. So I think, because we approached our family first and the co-parenting, that's just continued to benefit both of us and now our girls, because that's the environment they've grown up in.
I love that. And Regina, you've been married for 27 years as well, to Mr. Kevin over there. Been videoing the whole time. How has it been crucial to you, Regina?
Without Kevin, there's not me. So I actually almost don't know how to answer that question, because everything in our life has been about, I was even thinking about parents, like, what is mom and what is dad? We're parents. And that means on different days, we could be one or the other. And on some days, one has to be both. And I was thinking about your comment on just our kids went to 8 schools in 12 years. Well, we also lived in 3 countries and 3 states during that time too. And my husband's a veteran. And so he's been used to growing up in the military. He's been used to, hey, you're called, you serve, you go. And so there's not a lot of thinking that goes into change. And that resonates within our whole family, to where we just have a rhythm and it just has to work. And so whatever box or gap we have that needs to be filled, somebody needs to figure out how to fill it. And at the end of the day, our survival is not based on the fittest, it's based on the unit. And so we just have had that philosophy our whole lives. And something he tells me a lot that I think in this moment really resonates for me, which is, you've got to have perspective on your situation and where you are. Because on your worst day, hopefully I'll get it right, Kevin, on your worst day, you take all your problems and you throw them in a bucket with everybody else's. You'll be fighting to get yours back. And I reflect on that in the context of just this whole conversation on motherhood and balance and all of that stuff. There are people in Israel, and there are Palestinians right now, and there are people in Ukraine and in Russia, and they're dealing with real issues. All right, you think about moms and children, and I'm dealing with whether or not I'm being judged at the bake sale. And so so just having the right perspective in all of it, and knowing that we are blessed. If we are sitting here today, we are in a position that people would literally kill to be in. So, with that means we're going to take this like a grain of salt. We're going to get done what we need to do. And at the end of the day, we're going to all be fine. So that's
Thank you, Regina. I know the time is cutting close, so we won't have time for questions for the panel, but I would like to close with just one last question to Dylan and Caitlin, and that is, what are you most proud of about your mom?
I think for me, just watching her be so intentional with people in her life, whether it's me and my sister, or our grandparents, or neighbors, family. I mean, I shared how she was our cheer coach. She would come to practice every week, and we would get to choreograph things together and then teach everyone, which was so much fun. And growing up doing National Charity League together. And even just watching her walk around networking with people, it is so clear how many people's lives she touches, whether it's professionally or just friends. She really spends time with people and shows them that she cares and uses her empathy in that way. And I'll share one last little anecdote. This year at the career fair, I realized it was coming up and I had not done any preparation for it. I realized that I didn't have enough business outfits, that I hadn't looked at my resume in several months, and that I needed to get an internship. And she was in Denver for one night and Ubered out to Golden, took me shopping to buy this dress, and she reworked my resume so that I felt confident and was showing myself off in the best light. And then I got an internship. So, yeah.
So my answer would be a little different. Uh, for such a remarkable woman, we would be here all day if I just tried to list off one of my favorite qualities of man. But I know we don't have time for that, so I'm not gonna get into it. But my hopefully, but my favorite accomplishment that my mom has had is being my mom. So I'll leave it at that. But yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank y'all. We're going to have a short changeover, but before we change, I'd like to give Regina and Kim an award, more like a representation of being the glass shattering women that they are. We've never done this before, but we felt like, what do you give some incredible women, but something to put on their desk that's beautiful, right? So Breaking the Glass Ceiling Award goes to you, Kim, and then
Oh, thank you. Fun. Thank you. You're awesome. Good to work with you on this.
we'll have a short break while we change panelists.
All good.